Well, I'm joined on the set now by France 24's Marc Perelman. Marc, as we said, difficult week ahead, it looks like. First of all, tell us about the strike situation.
Well, the strike situation is exactly what the government did not want to see happen. We've seen announcements after announcement that the problem of the refineries, of gas stations would be solved last week, but it hasn't happened. And now we're reaching a tipping point because, as you said, tomorrow there are calls to widen the strike to other sectors, energy, yes, but also transportation. And this could be a very, very difficult time. This is why just a few minutes ago, we learned that Emmanuel Macron, the president, had convened an emergency meeting with the prime minister and other concerned ministers to discuss the issue of the refineries and how to really make sure that the French can go to the petrol station and get what they want and what they need to go on with their lives and their and to go to work and so on, because the government realizes that this is really, really dangerous, because we've seen those social movements before. In 2019, just before COVID, there was a massive protest movement against a reform of the pension system. And what has Emmanuel Macron proposed again just a few weeks ago? Well, that very reform. Obviously, the protest movements are about the high price of electricity and inflation and so on. But this is in the back of everyone's mind. And so this can be quite eruptive. And so this is why the government is really trying to find compromises, push the oil companies to raise salaries and so on. But clearly, this is a very, very, very fragile period for the government.
A huge challenge, as you say. And meanwhile, in the National Assembly, with votes and MPs, there are other big problems ahead for the government this week.
Yes, the problem started with the election, a parliamentary election. Emmanuel Macron had an absolute majority during his first mandate. Well, now he only has a relative majority. And this means that for the crucial budget vote these days, he's facing trouble. First of all, because there are lots of delays in the National Assembly. The opposition is putting forth amendments. There are discussions going on. The government says, especially now when we're seeing this looming recession on the horizon, we need a budget voted. And the thing is, in the French, you can use Article 49.3 of the Constitution, whereby essentially you railroad the budget through Parliament without a vote. So the government can do this only a few times and only for the budget. But this is seen, obviously, as an assault against democracy, against the opposition, because they say, why is the government afraid to debate? This is the debate, the budget of the French people. This should be debated openly. But the government has already announced that it is ready to use for the very first time this very controversial article. The opposition is saying, you should be careful. There's trouble on the street. There's trouble in Parliament. Just make sure you don't end up with an economic, social, and political crisis. This is what Emmanuel Macron wants to avoid at all costs.